and many others. I'm pleased to introduce to you Belinda Carlisle. Let's start by talking about the new album and the songs on it. So these are all classic songs that were originally recorded around 1968 to 1973. Is it fair to say that these songs are a part of your musical upbringing, or even maybe trace your musical upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, was born and raised in Southern California, and at a time when music was very much a part of the culture. And my escape, from my dysfunctional family, like everybody else, and was laying in front of the speakers every single day after school for hours, and then during summertime all day with my best friend, and listening to KHJ, KRLA, all these stations that were very much a part of, the whole California vibe at that time. So I these are some of the songs that really inspired me to want to be a singer. So, for the past 10 years or so, I was thinking one day I'm going to do a covers album. And in 2017, I thought that it was time, but I needed to find a concept for it and I decided just to really focus on the songs that I really, really loved.
It's worth noting that this is actually your second covers album, because you did a whole covers album in French, which makes you
Oh,
probably
that's right.
one of the few artists that probably have done a covers record of amazing songs in both languages.
Oh God, well that you're right. I totally forgot about my French album. It's all covers and all French classics, and that album actually, out of all my albums, is the dearest, I think, to my heart. I loved that album.
That is a great album. I listened to it before the interview. And were you buying? You said you were listening to music on the radio. Were you into buying 45s or singles? Did your parents help foster that? Any of that?
Well, I mean, yes, I would buy singles, the 45s, and I had little 45s, carrier, like a little record. I don't know, I can't think of the word, but I used to use my babysitting money and money from chores to do that because my parents didn't really help out with that. Although they did buy me my first single for my birthday, which was Aquarius by the Fifth Dimension. That was
That's
my first 45.
that's a great one. Did you have
Yeah,
any thought of covering that one?
I think that'd be impossible. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
you have to have a
it's
whole group
yeah,
of that.
it's
Yeah,
exactly. It's such a great song, and it's a song of that time. And whenever I hear it, it's like one of those songs that, just feels as exciting as it did the first time that I heard it.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And with the songs that are on the record, I mean, obviously these are all that you grew up with and that were part of your life. Are there any that have a specific personal memory to you that you're able to share, whether that's around discovering a song or how that song played into the time period in your life?
Well, the one song that when you asked me that, that came to mind was the last song on the album, called "Reflections of My Life" by Marmalade, and I was 10 years old at the time when it came out, and I I loved the song. I did have that on 45 as well, but I didn't really understand what the lyrics were about, and so when you were making this album, I thought, oh God, this would be a perfect way to end the album. And the lyrics are pretty heavy, and about, especially, me being able to sing them as an older woman, and with, experiences in life and in love and loss. Um, yeah, it was, but back then, when I was listening to it in Burbank, California, it was just like another beautiful pop song to me. I had no idea.
Were you, when you would hear these songs, would you sing along? Did you identify early on that you had a voice that was special?
Well, I think everybody thinks they have a special voice.
Well, you did, yeah,
Um,
obviously, but
um,
proved it.
but I know, I mean, of course, I had fantasies of being a singer, and I fancied myself a singer, but I never really got to hear myself until the first time of the first, I think it was the first or second go-go show. Second go-go show at the Rock Corporation in the Valley. And it was the first time I heard my voice recorded, and it was horrific. So I knew that I had a lot of work to do. But back then, I mean, I thought I probably, everybody thinks they sound good in the shower, and they do, or most people anyway.
Now, some of these songs, they're some of the greatest pop songs ever. But as you progressed in your music career, you went into punk, and were these songs? Did you find were they of any influence to your go-go bandmates or some of the early punk scene, or was this something that was kept aside?
Well,
And
I think that definitely growing up in California, it definitely influenced my taste in music. And I can speak for Charlotte, who was also born and raised there. Jane grew up there, so I'll count her as a Californian. So, um, you know, the music at that time, they had the Beach Boys, we had that whole surf sound, and it definitely, I always say that the Beach Boys is, and Brian Wilson is a big part of, part of my DNA. So, but as far as these types of songs that I picked, I mean, maybe the melodies, because I've always been attracted to songs with complicated melodies. So maybe in that way. But if anybody knew I was listening to Jim Croce in the punk days, I think they would. I don't think I would have gone down well, because everybody was all about, you can't like anything else but punk.
right.
But I mean, they definitely. I'd say that the my love for melodies comes from growing up with that California radio.
And something like Get Together, which you just released as a single. Do you remember the first time hearing that or what that song? I
Yeah,
find
I
it
do actually. It was in Burbank, and I mean, that was during the time of the Watts riots, the Vietnam War, and there's a lot of chaos going on. So I remember that, I think that song and then another song, Everyday People, the Sly and the Family Stone,
yeah.
were songs that really sort of spoke to me because, and, and they were similar in nature as well. So yeah, I do remember that. Every one of the songs on the album, it will take me back to moments of my childhood for sure.
When I spoke to Jess, he gave me a couple of interesting. I don't know if you know any of the backstory of that song, but it when it was released in originally in '67, I think it was not a hit. But then in 1969, the I think it was a charity organization that was promoting brotherhood of different ethnicities put together a PSA, a national PSA, and used that song. And from that,
Wow.
it ended up being big. He also shared with
Wow.
me, which was really, really fascinating, and I just didn't pay attention to know at the time. But after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, that song was on like a clear channel list of do not play. So there was a
Wow.
number of songs that, because of the message that it promoted, they tried to ban it. And for a short period of time, they did.
Oh my God, I had no idea. That's horrible.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Song
that's
about,
really, really horrible.
yeah.
What can you say? I mean, sometimes governments have interfered with you know, our reading and music tastes, our artistic tastes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the album, you had two songs on there that were Harry Nilsson. One was written by Fred Neil, which was Everybody's Talking, but the famous version is Harry Nilsson. And then obviously one. I read an interview that you actually had you knew Harry Nilsson. Is there any? He was a fascinating songwriter to me and a fascinating figure in music history, in my opinion.
Right.
Any
Right.
interesting anecdotes or anything that from him that you learned or that was interesting?
Well, I mean, he used to come. My husband had a restaurant in Brentwood, and he used to come every night to the restaurant and hold court in the bar. And he was, he always had a crowd around him, and he was just so like jovial and just like otherworldly, I'd say. Just, like just an amazing man and so friendly. And I don't really have any anecdotes, but I just being around him, a few nights and just having drinks and stuff, he's just a very kind man. So, and I know, and I was, devastated when he passed. And when I was going through the songs, that meant a lot to me. I go, oh my God, two Harry Nilsson songs on one album. But and I'd like to think that he would would approve of what I did to those songs. But there are two, he's written so many amazing songs, so yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that he would approve of them.
Absolutely. And I'd like to just move in a little to the transition from these songs and the influence of these songs into how you got into punk. And I actually
Right,
think Harry Nilsson is an interesting segue. He's absolutely not punk in what the music is, but to me, he is a punk. He's a rebel. He's
right.
independent. He's his own figure. And I'm curious because when we look at the track listing, you got The Air That I Breathe is probably the latest released on that, and it was probably 72 or 73. And then
Right.
you start getting into a whole different world in which you even acknowledge that liking Jim Croce would not be you know
Punk.
yeah, it would not be punk. So how did the transition go from this music into the British punk and thereafter?
Right. Well, I mean, around 72 is when the radio, that was my only access to music, by the way, was when it started to change, and I didn't really have the same sort of enthusiasm, I guess, like for, I mean, and I do now for bands like America or the Doobie Brothers or the Eagles. I mean, now I totally appreciate it. But back then I was like, man, it's, radio sucks now. And then one day in art class, I'm trying to think of whether it was seeing Iggy. I used to go to the record store all the time. And then I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I saw the cover of Raw Power, and I was just mesmerized. And I bought the album because of the artwork, and I brought it home. And then one of the other kids in art class brought Roxy Music Siren into class. So those two albums opened up a whole new world for me. So, I started getting really into all the alternative music and going to the record store and buying Melody Maker and NME to see, what all the kids were doing in London and all these other cities in the UK. And I just for it definitely spoke to the rebel in me, because I was always kind of a rebel growing up. So I just fell into it. And in the very beginning, I was at the very beginning of the punk scene in LA, and it was literally like 50 kids.
Yeah.
And then it exploded pretty rapidly. And I mean, we used to go down to the Mask all the time. And then of course there were punk shows at the Orpheum Theater, which is no longer there, on Holloway in West Hollywood, and the Whiskey, of course, and the Starwood. And I was just part of this whole little scene in LA that was really amazing and creative. And that the Go-Go's came out of that. And I think because of our musical influences, we always wanted to be more of a melodic punk band. And so, in the very beginning, you couldn't really hear like a melodic pop band like the Buzzcocks or like the Clash. There were a few other ones around. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but those were our influences. We were taking our California influences and putting it into the songwriting. And at first you couldn't really hear what the songs were because we couldn't really play. And as everybody became more musically proficient, I started to sing better. People were like, oh my God, these are like pop punk songs. They're not punk songs, And of course, a lot of people poo-pooed that, but we always loved melody. And I think that comes from all of our, growing up in that area of America.
I've heard you say in a number of interviews like that you all couldn't play and you needed help plugging in. Is that hyperbole, or is it like true
No,
that
that's true.
true?
The only reason why we asked Charlotte to join the band, she was in a band called The Eyes. And I remember that like it was yesterday. They were playing at the Starwood, and Margot, the original bass player, and I thought Charlotte's perfect for the band, because we had no idea how to do anything. So we thought she would be good because she knew how to plug in an instrument into an amplifier. So we went backstage at the Starwood, and we asked her to be a part of our band that had never played and never rehearsed, and she said sure. So we had no idea how to do anything. and that's why she joined we asked her to join the band, but she switched from bass that she played in the eyes to guitar because she thought it was similar, and she had another thing coming to her because it was a lot harder for her. But yeah, we just learned as we went along.
It's amazing. And another amazing fact is you didn't play a live show with the Germs, but you were an early member. If not, were you the first drummer of the Germs?
Yes, and that's a really funny story. Because I'll go back like a year before, like 1975, I think. I went with my friend Terry, who was Lorna Doom in the Germs. We went to high school together. We went to the Beverly Hilton to get Freddie Mercury's autograph. And so we're in the lobby waiting for Queen to come through. And then we see these two kids that looked kind of like us, like little freaks. So we were kind of cruising each other. And then they came up to us, and it was Darby and Pat Smear, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And we said, "Well, we're here to get Freddie Mercury's autograph." They said, "We are too." So we went to his room. We knocked on his door. Of course, he didn't answer. So we parted ways, and then about, I don't know, a few weeks later, there was a flyer in one of the clubs. I think it was a Starwood that said, "Looking for two untalented girls." So we thought, that's perfect. That's us. So we called the number. We met up with them, and it was Darby and Pat. So that was weird. So I was the first drummer. And I actually rehearsed with the band. And then I came down with mononucleosis. So I had to go back home to my parents. And then our other friend from art class, Becky, she was Daugher. She was the second drummer before Don Bowles in the Germs. So when I recovered, I helped the Germs. I was the Germs prop person, and would hand Darby peanut butter and like broken glass and salad dressing. So that was sort of part of the act. And then of course the Germs went their way. We formed the Go-Go's, and then the year that the Go-Go's were being inducted into the Rock Hall was the same year the Foo Fighters were being inducted. And Pat and I text back and forth. We were saying, isn't it weird that, going from the Germs, our very first band, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean, you can't make that kind of stuff up.
Incredible. And
Yeah.
how did you get the moniker Dottie Danger?
Dottie Danger. I don't know. I was just trying to, think of silly names, and yeah, there was a Terry Ryan, who was Lorna Doom, and I don't know why I picked Dottie Danger, but it seemed pretty fitting, to be honest.
Let me get Elsie here to ask a question. Elsie, you want to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Here, let me give you this microphone right here.
Okay.
Why did you start the organization to help animals on the street?
Oh, Animal People Alliance. Well, I've been a lifelong animal rights advocate. And then I, have a big love for India. And I saw that there was a need there for animal services. So in 2015, we formed Animal People Alliance, a friend of mine and I, and it's been very successful. We do on-site treatment for street animals. We've expanded into Thailand, where we do a lot of spaying and neutering, and we do rabies drives, because rabies, people don't realize, is still a big problem in the world. So we do lots of rabies drives in both India and Thailand. And now we're expanding into Mexico, where I live, where I am establishing a donkey sanctuary outside of Mexico City. And we've treated over 103,000 animals now in 10 years.
If you could see Elsie right now, she is very excited to hear that. Her
Ah,
face is very excited.
well, I'm very proud of the work that the teams are doing. Yeah, they're amazing.
What's the website?
It's called animalpeoplealliance.net.
Awesome. And Elsie, do you want to ask a question about the Go-Go's? There you go.
What was your favorite memory being in the Go-Go's?
I think my favorite memories were of the time before the band exploded and became huge. It was when we were, playing the whiskey and the Starwood. And I remember I had this beat up old Cadillac with a Jolly Roger flag that I would drive to all the gigs. And across the street from the whiskey, there was a gas station. And I'd park my car, I'd get my stage clothes out of the car, and I would, walk up the hill, and all the kids in line were, and it was a really amazing time in music. And that was before the Go-Go's became a business. Because when it becomes a commodity or a business for a record company, then things do change. I mean, it's still fun, but you have a lot of pressure. But this was before any sort of pressure, and we were young and carefree, and just having a great time.
Amazing. You want to ask anything else? Not, I got a question for her. You want one more? Okay.
What was your first thought about making your own songs, like Heaven Is Our Place on Earth, or like playing them without a band?
Well, first of all, the only thing I knew how to do was sing when the Go-Go's broke up. So, and I knew I had the opportunity to make an album. So that I thought, of course I'm going to do that. So once I finished it, I thought, oh my God, now I'm putting myself out there on my own without the security blanket of 4 other people. And it was really scary, I have to say. I remember I was opening for Robert Palmer, and I remember just being petrified every night. And it took a long time to find my way as a solo artist and a solo performer, because I had been so used to having 4 other people that were taking up the slack and making me feel comfortable.
Do you think we'll be seeing any shows coming up around the country or elsewhere around the new record?
I think probably next year. I have some shows on the East Coast at the end of this year, and next year I'll do a little run of dates. I'm I think probably the West Coast.
Awesome. And I know you just did Coachella, and you did a UK festival too, right? Big one.
Well, I know. No, I mean, I'm going to the UK next week because I have a tour in Europe, and I have a few dates there. So no, we didn't do any festivals to Go-Go's. We just did Coachella. Yeah.
Any plans for future Go-Go's, or is that on hiatus for the moment?
It's on hiatus. I know I've learned that you can never say never with that band, because I've said it so many times. And something always comes along, and then that grabs our interest, and if it makes sense, we do it. So who knows? I can never say never. We don't have any plans right now, but if something comes along that makes a lot of sense and it's going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure we'll be there.
Awesome. Well, we hope to have you back. It was a great
Yes.
chat. And I want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you for this chat, and congrats on the new album. Thank you for listening to the Legends Podcast by All Day Vinyl. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate it, share it, subscribe, and follow us and check us out at All Day Vinyl on Instagram and YouTube.